This is Shiloh Bijou, and you are listening to Grit and Grace. Good afternoon, evening, wherever you're coming in from. This is Shiloh Bijou, and you are listening to Grit and Grace. Let's get started. Oh my gosh, so many things have changed. Obviously, the name change, we can talk about that. We might as well just have some girl chat while we're in here with one of my favorite people on the planet. Brianna White is with us. She is an activist, an incredible woman, and she is leading the charge in the challenge with sobriety and getting that out to people as well as me. Obviously, it's a passion of mine to share my story, and her story is incredible, but we have been friends for years. We have walked through a couple of storms together and we definitely have helped each other heal. And that's why we're on here, because we want to help our listeners, our viewers. We want to help everyone who is kind of tuning in to know that they're not alone. It's sobriety is so funny because when you say sobriety, a lot of people always think alcohol or drugs. There's so many other things when it comes to sobriety. We have people who, struggle with porn addiction. I mean, we could talk about all the things, but sobriety is so much more than just the thing. It's so much deeper, and it comes into trauma and healing those things. And I know that we went on a journey together years ago in PSY seminars, and we did that together, and that was like one of the most intimate things I've done with somebody, and it was with you. And it was so incredible after, because we formed a friendship and a bond that will last forever. And so I'm super excited to introduce you. Brianna White, come on here and say hello. Tell everyone a little bit about where you're from, who you are, and then we're going to go back and forth because I'm really excited to have a conversation tonight.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really in-depth conversation, not only about our friendship, but like you said, we've had so many different journeys together in network marketing, personal development, and now sobriety. So that's just what I love about you, is that you're so willing to go there on all those levels. So again, my name is Brianna White. I'm 27. I'm currently in Southern California. I've lived kind of all over the West Coast at this point, and I've gotten a lot of experience in several different avenues. Like we covered kind of network marketing, the personal development arena. And now I'm really on this mission to help younger generations get sober and kind of learn about not only the dangers that come with alcohol and drugs, but just really where it can lead you and how to recover from that. So that's my personal mission and what I'm excited to talk with you about.
I'm excited to talk about it too, because I'm in a really interesting, I think you're kind of close to me. We're going in the same direction. We're on the same train track. You get to this stage of recovery, and you're never like done. Like, I do want to preface this, like, you don't go to recover like, oh, it's been a year, I'm good forever. That's not how that works. I'm just going to tell you all that's not how it works. But you get to this stage where you're like, it's easy to talk about and it's not traumatic. Okay. Like, this is the part where I feel I wanted this so bad day one. Like the first few weeks of it, you're like, can I just be where this person is? Where you can laugh about it, but you can be serious, you can laugh about it, but you can talk about it without that pain just digging at you, because you know what I'm saying. Obviously there's pain. If somebody's numbing, they're numbing something. Right.
For
and
sure.
I was numbing. And I went through this stage, and a lot of the listeners know, I went through a stage for like a good 3 years of completely killing myself. Like, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm just going to drink. Like, this is it. I'm not happy. I'm giving up. And that was inside. I didn't want to say that out loud, but that's 100% where I was. And I did that for 3 years. And you were part of that journey, even if you didn't know it. Like, you were in my life, maybe in the background. We had worked a little bit together, but we were in the same path. But it was interesting because all of a sudden I look and you're going down this journey as well. And it was almost the same time. It was so interesting. I do think when the world got flipped upside down, COVID, all the things, we say it all the time, it changed everybody. And some people went one way and some people went the other. And for me, thank God it was sobriety, because it was like, it's time. It's do or die. And it really was for me. So let's talk about your journey, because obviously it didn't start last year. Your journey started way long ago. There was lots of deep pain. Let's just hit it. Let's talk about it, because everybody listening needs to hear there are other people like them struggling, and it's okay. And you can do it. You can totally do it. So let's talk about it. So let's go into maybe some childhood stuff. Where you came from where, and kind of what was the dynamic like in your house?
I would definitely tell people I grew up in a pretty blessed childhood. However, the more I kind of talk about it, I realize it's worse than what I thought it was, which I think a lot of people go through. Like, I definitely always had food, always had a roof over my head, mom and dad that really loved me. But I really think my trauma started when I went through a really horrific experience being molested from a stepbrother. And I don't talk about that. I've never actually even said that to anyone online. There's few people that know about that. I think it's a really terrifying experience more children go through than we realized or than anyone really talks about. And at the time, I remember telling my mom about it and being terrified, and no one believed me. And so I kind of started living this life of like, it really doesn't matter what I do because no one's going to believe me, whether it's good or bad. And with that, I remember being just afraid all the time and never feeling like the people who were supposed to protect me had my back. And I started, my personal drinking started, I had my first drink when I was 12 years old in AA. That's like a late bloomer. We kind of joke about that. A lot of people have drinking problems, really started when they were young, experimenting at that young age. And I used it as a way to fit in. It sounds so cliche, but I really struggled to find my own identity and find like, how do I make friends? How do I find people that like me? And I learned like after I had a couple drinks, wow, like I'm funnier. People laugh at me. People want to be around me. I feel important. And that really carried on into my teenage years. And then I got introduced to some harder drugs when I was about 19 years old. And my mindset back then was, oh, it's not the drinking that's a problem. I just needed drugs to be able to drink more so I didn't black out as fast. And it was like this, like I'd figured out this secret formula. And it's really sad and sick to talk about it now, but it's something that so many teenagers, young adults struggle with, that go through. And I carried that on for a long time. And like you said, my drinking didn't just start a year ago or a year and a half ago when I was starting to sober up. That was at the end of my life. Really, I was in this terrible relationship that I advertised on social media was perfect. And he too also had addictions that he struggled with. And anytime you're an addict, generally you find yourself with another addict because you guys can allow each other's behavior to go on.
You can enable each other. You can enable
for sure.
each other. So
for sure. So, and then I had unfortunately lost my dad to brain cancer. And like you said, I was numbing. I just wanted to numb it all. And I really, right around the beginning of 2020, I was truly drinking to kill myself. I was really just hoping that I'm just going to drink this much and hopefully I won't wake up tomorrow. And then I'd wake up and I'd be like, well, now I'm hungover, so I'm going to start drinking again. And I just had that sick cycle for months until I finally kind of ended up at my mom's house in a really bad state, in and out of the hospital. And luckily I had my family to wrap their arms around me and help me get through that detox and get me sober. And now here I am. But like you said, it was a long journey of just trying to numb myself because I didn't want to deal with my reality whatsoever.
It's so interesting because I think a lot of things come down to these early stages where we lose trust in the person who's supposed to protect us. Like these authority figures, and they don't even know they're doing it, right? They think,
yeah.
and I'm open about this. I did this to my daughter. My daughter was telling me things and I'm like, you're being dramatic. I don't think I wanted to accept some of them. So I was like, oh my God, that's going to rock the boat. And I wasn't even realizing what I was doing. And that, as a parent now looking at it, I'm like, what did I just do? I wasn't listening to her. And I saw it and I'm like, but this is what happened to me, and again, same home, like good parents, they love me. Were they perfect? No. Is any parent perfect? Hell no. Like, it's like, we're all trying to learn, like we're all learning. But at the same time, when you talk about like, they didn't believe you, it's like this little thing goes, well, who cares then? Like, who cares? Like, I remember, and I've talked about this too, like I was smoking cigarettes at 5 years old, 6 years old, because no one was home. I was kissing boys when I was 7 and 8, 6. I mean, not like getting crazy, but I mean, I could do a lot of things. I had nobody paying attention. And when you start to learn that, you're like, well, I'm just going to get really smart because we think we're smart, and we're going to like manipulate the situation because we know what's best for us when we're like a tiny kid, like 10, 12. And yes, and 12 years old. Isn't that funny? I was drinking at 12 years old. I was having drinks. I was sneaking things and getting tattoos. Like I did they call it stick and poke. I did that. I'm sure you probably did too. I mean, I got a stick and poke when I was 12 because it was the first time I got drunk, 10, 12, around there. And it's just like all these things. And it was the same thing. I didn't know how to fit in because I didn't understand I didn't know who I was. I was always like looking for this girl. I'm like, well, maybe this is who I am. And I'm so much fun because I'm a little bit more relaxed. And so I think a lot of people share that story. I mean, a lot of people do. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's drugs. Like, it's not that hard to get there. It's really not. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. It is very easy to get right to drugs, or just skip the alcohol and go right to drugs.
Exactly.
So let's go into some of these middle years. Okay. So out of high school, we kind of spiral, right? We go to the next level. What happened then? Because this is part of the story that I think it's where we're young enough to handle it. We're going. We're burning the candle. We're doing all the things, but we're just destroying ourselves as a person. Not just emotionally, but we're doing things that are damaging, like forever, to ourselves. And I'm talking about like our lifestyle. We just don't care, and we think we're going to be okay. So let's talk about those times right now and hit on that.
Yeah. So those middle years, like when I really started, like when I first got introduced to drugs, I was 19. I had gone through a breakup. I went through the typical, I was 18 years old, engaged. Thought I was going to be with this guy for the rest of my life. He was on drugs. And I started, after we broke up, I definitely went through that phase where I gained some weight. I was depressed. I was at home all the time and was like, you know what? I'm going to turn my life around. And got really involved in the gym. And then I really started getting tattooed. And at that point, I was on this mission to be like the world's #1 tattoo model. Like that was my goal. That was my drive. That was when Instagram had just started. And I was like flying high on that. I became like this small town celebrity. Like people like knew who I was in my tiny little hometown. And that felt powerful. Like there's a power that comes with that. And a lot more socializing and drinking that followed suit. And I went to the first time I'd ever done cocaine, I went to a tattoo show and I'd been really drunk. And I end up at this like really exclusive party. I was in Vegas. I wasn't 21, but everyone was letting me drink. So I remember thinking like, I'm that bitch right now. Like people are letting me hang out with them. Even though now I look back, I'm like, that's so weird that these old guys were trying to get me drunk. But it's
not weird, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. Right, exactly.
It's such a confidence thing. I don't know why we think like that when we're younger, but there's people who take advantage of that. So, and then I had tried that drug for the first time, and I remember thinking like, this is what I've been missing. Like this is the thing I need, And after that, I really started it was really interesting when I look back at the times I had these really scary blackouts after. I remember thinking it doesn't matter how drunk I get because I'm going to find drugs and it's going to even me out and then my night will be okay. And then I wouldn't find those drugs that night. And then I have like these disgustingly embarrassing stories of how sloppy I was and how drunk I was and like borderline pretty scary that I always thank God that I don't know. I thank God that I'm alive all the time because I don't know how I made it through some of those experiences. But that was my mindset back then. And then bam, here comes 21. And I had another friend of mine who told me, you should be a stripper. Like we could dance in Vegas. We could make a lot of money. And I thought, that's a great idea. Like this is going to be so good for me. I'm going to make so much money. And at the time, now that I look back, I can see like where it really was a downfall. And it's not that it was this total terrible experience. I definitely had fun at times, but for the most part, like I was putting myself in this really sick environment that was destroying my mental health. Obviously, the drugs are really heavy in those types of places. So I was using a lot of drugs to cope. I could never get myself through a night sober. Obviously, I couldn't deal with the men or the state of mind I had to be in without a couple of drinks, because then it turns you on a little bit. You're a little bit more flirty. There was no way I was going on stage unless I had a good buzz. And that was and I was only 21. Like, I was such a baby back then. And I really thought at the time all that was okay. So I look at those, those were like my middle years of my drinking and my drug career, so to say. And I think the problem with that is so much of it was allowed and okay. And I kept putting people in front of me that told me that that behavior was acceptable. And that's where that goes wrong. Obviously, when you're drunk, you don't want to hang out with people who are sober or doing better with their lives, because then you have to look at your own life. And I wanted to be around people who were doing worse than me because I felt better about myself in what I was doing. So I think having that at such a young age, I carried that on as I continued to drink, telling myself what I was doing was okay, or having a reason to justify it. And that set me up for failure ultimately.
Of course, you were in the perfect environments to spiral. I mean, let's be real. And, I would never knock somebody who strips, because I do. I mean, I'm a real person. I joke and I say, you know what, here's the deal. If somebody can go up there and do that, and honestly, holy cow. I mean, there's some really talented people. I don't knock anyone for their choices like that. But most women that do it do come back and say, I had to be screwed up. I had to be messed up to do it. Yeah. And so then you're in a totally different world. You have to get blackout, or you have to get drunk, because you can't deal with what's going on. Now, not every stripper's like that. And I won't, again, knock it, because some people can go out and do it and they make money and that's their job. Like, they do it and they hustle. But it's very hard on you emotionally, no matter what, because you are put up there as a thing. You are a thing. This is your body. That's what they're looking at. I mean, a lot of the times in many strip clubs, they're not very high end. There's all other things going on. Then you add drugs, you add booze, you add money, and you have all the perfect things to have a very, very bad outcome. And, the other thing I was thinking about when you're talking about blackouts, like, I used to call it the feel bads. Okay. So I just had this conversation with somebody. I got to a point in my drinking for a very long time that even if I wasn't drunk, I didn't remember a lot of the night. And I'm like, I wasn't even drinking that much. I'm like, I don't remember that. People be like, oh, remember when this happened? And I'd be like, I started lying. I'd be like, yeah.
Oh yeah, you say you remember it, but no memory.
I don't remember conversations. I'm like, when did that happen? And this was a good 5 years. So there was 5 years of this where it started to happen slowly. And then it was a joke. Like, my husband at the time was like, oh, it's the feel bads, don't feel bad. And I'm like, I don't remember any of that. That scares me. And what did I say? Did I hurt someone's feelings? And there's times where I did. There was times where I had a sharp tongue and I'm sarcastic, and you add booze to that, and it was really bad. I got in some fights. I mean, I had done some things and I didn't remember what I said. I had to apologize for things. I couldn't even tell you what I said. So it's like, it's a horrible feeling to wake up when you are blackout, because you literally don't know what you did. You don't even know if you slept with someone. You don't know. I mean, you don't know. And it is the worst feeling in the world to wake up like that. And for me, it happened a lot, and it was scary. It was really scary.
Yeah, so. They're terrifying. I definitely have too many experiences to count of blackout. And in my last relationship, where we were together for a long time, especially at the end there when my drinking was really heavy, I remember lying to him, because he'd be like, I could tell he knew that I was having a drinking problem. And obviously there was some frustration there. And he'd be like, do you remember saying this last night? Do you remember doing this to that? And same thing. I'm a very sarcastic person. If you know me, I love to joke around and push the limits when it comes to like teasing my friends. However, when you throw booze in there, those lines get blurred and boundaries get crossed very easily.
Yeah.
And he would ask me, do you remember saying this? Or like, and I'd have no memory, but I didn't want to give up that I had a problem. So I would lie. I'd be like, oh, I remember that. No, it wasn't like that. Or I already texted her and talked to her about it. And because there was no way. And of course, at that time, I'm not going to admit I have a drinking problem, because this is like I'm not going to give this up. So I got a drinking problem. I got to do all these other things now to fix it. And let's just back it up. It's my little secret. You come up with these really creative ways to keep that undercover. So I totally relate to the lying of the blackouts. Just let's lie about it, move on, because honestly, I don't want to deal with it. And it's easier to just move past it, get another drink, and, go to the next event.
It is hard. And when you're dealing with something like that and you're with somebody, there's also the other side of it where they can manipulate you very easily. They can create things that didn't happen because they know you're not going to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And there was times that did happen, or things are exaggerated where because they're mad at you because you probably did say something. I remember, and this isn't disrespecting. It's just there was a few times it happened where I'm like, I know I didn't say that, but I know that you're saying I said it that way because you're angry at me. And there was a lot of, because when you're drinking like that and you hurt people because you're hurt. You're drinking because you're hurt. So hurt people, right? So I was hurting people. And so, I think his way of sometimes kind of getting me back in a little tiny way was doing things like that. And then I would panic. Like, did I say that? Was that really how I said it? And then later on, he'd be like, well, it wasn't that bad. Because he could see how upset I got. Because it was tearing me apart. Like, after a while, there was about a good year or two where I knew straight up, I'm like, I have a drinking problem. I 100% do. Like, I was saying it to people. I'm like, I have a drinking problem. I know it. I need to quit. I'm not quitting, but I need to quit. It was just right there. I got to that point where I'm like, I am a straight up drinking problem, but I'm still drinking. And that was really, really hard. And so relationship dynamics are interesting. And when there's manipulation and control going on, you can be very easily manipulated and controlled as well. And so that's a really tough part to deal with when you add, hi, I'm an alcoholic. Now I'm realizing there's manipulation and control going on. And now, how the hell do I fix this? So let's talk about your healing journey, because this is another reason that we became very close. We went through a very powerful kind of moment together. We met each other in multi-level marketing, obviously. It was awesome. I see this girl who I think is fine as hell. I'm like, you're beautiful. Who is this? With one of my friends. And I'm like, I need to know this person. I need to know her because you stood out, not just because of your tattoos. You just stood out. You were beautiful. You were standing there. I'm like, I need to know this person. And I ended up falling in love with you right away because you just had a genuine personality. We clicked, but we got to go through some healing together. So let's just talk about that moment when you were dating one of my friends. We were at work events together. We got close, and then we went through some healing. And what was that doing for you? I think this was like, you weren't quite coming out of the drinking phase, but you definitely had evolved very quickly when you were in this environment.
Yeah. So it's something I'm still really examining a lot, because a lot of people, I feel, look at me and they're like, how did you have like this huge personal growth journey alongside becoming an alcoholic? And it's a tough position to be in, because I think the most frustrating part about personal development is gaining the awareness. And then anytime you do anything after that, now you're aware. Now I'm like hyper aware of my mistakes, what I'm doing, how I'm being, and how that's affecting people around me. Yet I'm still in a place now where almost I'm unwilling to do anything about it, because ignorance is bliss, right? So when you have all these issues, you think that everyone else's problems are their fault. You never realize it's up to you. But now I'm in that position of, oh my God, I know my problems are my fault and I don't want to do anything about it. So for me, getting into that personal development arena was definitely a lifesaver. I had taken my first ever type seminar, class, talk, whatever you want to call it, right out of the strip club. And the guy I was dating at the time introduced me to this class. He's like, let's date. I think you would really enjoy these types of lectures. And I went, and it was an eye opener for me. And in that first class, if you remember, you set like a 30-day goal.
Yeah.
And my 30-day goal was to get sober and quit dancing, and then commit to this guy by moving from Vegas to Colorado with him. And it really did change my life, because at that point, I had started to realize I had had a drinking problem, and I thought I had fixed it back then. And by moderating it, however, as you get into like AA and stuff, you learn that's not ever really an option.
Mhm.
But having all those tools, I was able to look at, you know, a lot of my childhood trauma, a lot of things I wasn't willing to let go of. There was a lot around my grandmother's death that I had blamed myself for, that I used alcohol to kind of cope with. And a lot of like the childhood trauma that I had really kind of like just mostly forgotten about, or just thought I had been told it didn't happen. So I kind of believed it. So I just shoved that under, you know, the rug. So I was with my ex for a while, and we really hit it hard without those classes. I went on to the advanced courses and leadership, and then I got really into volunteering with it and giving it back. And I think it was because I noticed such a big difference in my life, and I really wanted to pay it forward by helping other people with that. I mean, I got my brother, my mom, and my dad involved. They went through the classes. It for sure has saved my relationship with my brother and my mom. And I think when I look back, I noticed that once I started to pull back from that work, I leaned more on alcohol to deal with my problems. And that's kind of where I think I lost myself in it. I loved that work, but I am still in a place where I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I say I've got this knowledge and these tools and this experience, but at the same time, I wasn't living the work. You know, I could preach it, but I wasn't really walking the walk. So it's an interesting place to be in.
Well, because I think it's very easy to do it. If you think about it, it's like, okay, I'm going to deal with everything else, because the drinking is going to get me through all the things I have to deal with now. So your best friend is your drinking. Like, that's your best friend. So that's not going anywhere, but everything else. So like how you can transform your body. We're very similar people. Okay. So you are a very beautiful person. You model, it's all the things, like she's gorgeous. And so you can go and do photo shoots and prep and do all the things, work out, you can eat clean, you can do all the right things, right? But then in the background, it's like, well, I'm still having my drinks. But what we do is we make sure that we count the calories, or we do it right so we can have the drinks. Okay. Yeah. That's what we do. So we became accountable. We became accountable for everything but this one thing, but we just make sure that we're aware of how to manage it, because we think we can manage it. So what we do is we're like, I'm going to deal with all my childhood trauma, my mom, my dad. We're going to deal with all the things, and we're going to not deal with this one, even though we kind of know it's there. And we're like, yeah, that's there. We're going to go over here because we need that. You don't need it, but we're not going to deal with it. But isn't it funny? This is where it kind of shifts. You know, in the background, that if you dealt with that one thing, all the other things would go. It's like amazing, right? So for years in business, this is for me, and I want to hear your version of this. For years in business, I would say if I just quit drinking, I would hit every goal I've ever wanted to hit. I already know, because I would avoid certain things, because I knew I would probably be hungover or drunk, that I wouldn't be able to take that much responsibility. I took just enough, and I worked just enough, because I could work, I could hustle. I was still a top producer, drinking very heavily. And I'm like, how am I doing this? Like, I wasn't even showing up half the time. And I would tell myself, could you imagine if you didn't drink, how good you'd be? Like, what you could do. And I would say that to myself. And I'm like, if I could just quit drinking, I'd be right there. And then the day comes where you do quit drinking, and you start looking at what fades away, and all this stuff that starts melting away. It hurts. It's not easy. But when it starts to go away, and you start realizing everything that I've ever wanted is happening. Why did I wait so long? You think you need it. So what's your take on that? What's your version of it? Because that's how I was. I, for years, kept saying, if I just quit drinking, I know I could do everything I've ever wanted to do. And even though I knew that, I still didn't do it. I was brave.
You know, for me, I didn't have that level of awareness when I was in business doing that, because I think the problem was for me is I had so many people giving me feedback that I was great or I was fantastic and I was changing their life. And I remember thinking like, it was kind of like, well, I used the drink to celebrate a lot, especially I had taken another job in the seminar industry where the people I worked with were huge partiers. And to me, I always saw other people who were really successful also partied. So it was kind of like, oh, like if I want to be that successful, I got to party like this. Sure. And it's really not the case. However, I mean, I can't really sit there and like analyze each person because obviously however they drink is specific to them. But for me, that was my thought process. I kept thinking that. And I never really could have an honest conversation with myself at the time of if I quit drinking, then I could have more success or I could show up bigger, because a lot of those times, even when I was working with you, when you had first switched and I jumped in with you, I couldn't do those live videos without a couple glasses of wine. And so drinking to me was my tool to be successful. Like that's what I would tell myself. Like I'm going to be better at this after I have a drink. I won't be as nervous. I'm going to seem more confident. And I think it was, obviously it's a sickness that I'm lying to myself thinking that. And I never could tell myself like, oh, I would be better if I quit drinking. Because when my drinking started to get really heavy, I wasn't in business in that way anymore. So I didn't have to I never thought alcohol was the problem. I just kept thinking, oh, I need to change this. I need to change that. Like I talk a lot about it with my mom, in the sense of we never think the drinking or the drug is the actual problem. So I never even made that connection when I was drinking a lot. It was more like everything else. It was like, well, I need to work out at night instead of in the morning, or I need to switch to hard liquor you know what? I'm drinking too much wine, too much sugar. I'm going to switch to tequila instead because that's lighter and healthier. And I won't have I got to drink more expensive stuff because then I won't have the hangover. Like it was never the alcohol that was the problem. There was always something else I had to blame it on. So, and even getting sober, I never thought like, oh, if I quit drinking, like that wasn't even an option to me at the time. There was times years back where I started to think, maybe there's a drinking problem here. So maybe I'll try. And then I would not drink for like 30 days. And I'm like, I don't have a problem because I didn't drink for 30 days. So now I should have a drink because obviously I'm fine. And I think you might have stories like that too, where I quit drinking 100 times before I got sober, and I would celebrate my time of not drinking 2-3 weeks by drinking because obviously it wasn't a problem. So yeah, for me, I never even had that connection. I always had another reason why I wasn't successful. It was my ex's fault. It wasn't the right company. It was all these other things, but I was never, ever going to blame it on alcohol because then I'd have to give it up. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to hear, like knowing that like you already had that awareness, because I never was able to make that connection.
Oh, I had it. I just kept it very secret. Like yeah. I kept it secret. And then I stopped keeping it secret. It got so bad. I'm like, I'm an alcoholic. Like I just say it. I'd be like, I'm an alcoholic. I know I am. I just got so there. Like my rock bottom was tough. It was coming. I'm like, oh my God, I knew it was coming. I'm like, one screw up and I'm effed. You know what I mean? And then it happened. And it was a blessing because I had prayed for it. I wanted to quit. So I wanted to quit. I just didn't want to quit. Like, I'm scared. I'm scared that if I quit drinking, nobody's going to like me. I'm going to you think these dumb thoughts. That is like the dumbest thing. And I'm like, why do I think this way? Well, we go through this. We're in love with it. It's your best friend. So did you have a rock bottom? What was your rock? Everybody has a rock bottom, but it's different for everybody. So what the hell happened where you're like, I'm done?
My rock bottom was so ugly. I thought I had multiple rock bottoms. You kind of think like, oh, this is my bottom. I'm going to turn my life around. And now I could look at my rock bottom and I pray all the time. I'm like, please God, let that be the worst it ever gets. So it was in September of 2019. My dad was at the end of his brain cancer battle. And he'd been battling throat cancer for about almost a year ahead of that. And me and my, at the time, fiance were really rough. There was just this constant cheating, the constant gaslighting. all the manipulation that comes with it, where I use drinking to deal with it. And so I had remembered, I knew my dad was going to go at any point, and I was praying. I would pray to God, like, please just take him already. Like, why is he even here? Like, he is suffering so much. Just take him. And I couldn't handle work. So I was drinking a lot to deal with the cheating and then my dad. And I started to figure out I'm getting pretty bad here, because I was drinking 24/7. I had stashes of alcohol everywhere. If you saw me with a protein shaker and like a keto drink or a powder in it, it had vodka in it almost all the time. And that was how I could like maintain it, because my body was so dependent on it. And uh, my boyfriend left. He went to go out of town to go party in Chicago. And I'd asked him, I said, will you, if my dad dies while you're gone, like, promise you'll come back. Like, promise you'll just fly back, because I can't deal with it alone. Like, okay, I promise. And I don't even remember how I had gotten to the decision, but I'd went out, I'd partied with my brother. I was really heavy on drugs, Adderall, cocaine, drinking all through the hours of the night. And it was probably about 2 a.m. when I finally told him, I said, all right, I'm going to check myself into a rehab tomorrow. And I'm like high out of my mind making this decision. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, like, all right, like, do, whatever you think you want to do. And I went home and I was Googling rehabs, Googling places to detox. And I went, took me almost 12 hours to find somewhere that had an empty bed for me to go. Ended up in the middle of this disgusting detox facility in Denver. I think it was a 0.27 when I went in there. I drove there. And I was like, this is all right. I'm getting the help I need. I called my mom, called my brother, called my boyfriend, told them what I was doing. And, they had to put me on some medication to kind of help me detox from the alcohol, because I had so much in my system. And while I was asleep, I remember a nurse coming in and she said, you got a call from your brother. And I was like, I already know what that call is, and I'm not going to take it. And so I think I slept another 12 hours before they were like, you've got phone calls coming in, you need to take them. And I go into the office and I get the call that my dad passed away. Oh. And so I truly believe that my dad knew I was trying to get help at the time, and that he finally let go because I had finally done something to get help. So that's at least what I like to tell myself. And I thought that was my rock bottom. Fast forward a couple months, I was sober 62 days, and I'd moved to Arizona, and I was hanging out with some other people I was in business with. And it's my birthday and they want to take me out for a birthday night. And I had convinced myself, I've been sober 2 months. I don't have a drinking problem. I'm just going to moderate with some wine, and I'm going to have just a glass or two of wine for my birthday. We're going to a really nice restaurant. Obviously, if it's really nice, I want to have some nice wine to celebrate. And, like an ambulance ride, an 8-ball, and a blackout later, I'm in full-blown relapse.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I mean, they always say like when you relapse, it's like 10 times worse. And that was what I had went through, to the point where that was November of 2019. I finally got sober in April 2020. And what had happened was I had blown through every dollar my dad had left me with drugs and alcohol. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I was selling naked pictures because I knew I could generate a couple $100s here and there by doing that. I wasn't going to do OnlyFans. I wanted to do like the secret thing. And I mean, I was like, oh, this is so empowering. I'm doing this because like I'm a powerful woman, and look at me. And there are women who do that. And like you said, never going to knock another woman who does that. But that was how I lied to myself that it was okay. And so, but again, it was just like stripping. I couldn't do it sober. I'd be blacked out and sending pictures to people in my contacts, asking for money in return. And I mean, it was working, but it wasn't until I remember I had been blacked out and I had posted a completely nude video of me on Snapchat and no memory of it. And there are all kinds of professionals I had that I had worked with that had seen it, I don't even know who saw it. And I just was so embarrassed. I mean, I just was the worst feeling in the world. And I deleted it right away and yet continued the behavior. And it wasn't until I got in a really scary situation where I'd met up with a guy in a hotel and I got really hurt. And I called my brother, terrified, crying. Um, and he came and picked me up and pretty much was like, I'm taking you to mom's house because like you're a mess. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I'm like, I just need to go to the hospital, get some Ativan in me because I was having these like chest pains that I get when I would withdraw from the drugs. And that was my system. I had already figured it out. If I can go to the hospital, tell them I have chest pain, they're going to put Ativan in me. It'll control me. I can go to the liquor store, get a drink, and I'll be okay. And that was my system. Yeah. And so I was like, just take me. He drove all the way from LA out to Phoenix, came and got me. We went to the hospital, and next day he was like, get in the car, like I'm driving you to mom's. And I started to detox on the way home. And I truly remember believing that the hallucinations I had were the devil himself trying to take me. There was these shadow people I saw. There was this feeling of hands all over me trying to like pull me down. I was seeing things in the road, just thinking I was going crazy. And my first stop was the hospital again, as soon as I got into town. And it wasn't really a decision I had made. It's not like those events happened and I was like, okay, I've got a problem, I want to stop drinking. It was just more of the way things had happened. And I ended up at my mom's house, who has also recovered from some addiction herself. And I have lots of other family. And so my mom and brother really just wrapped their arms around me and pulled me from, I just have goosebumps thinking about how terrifying it was. Because I was, like you said, I was drinking to kill myself. I was just hoping I wouldn't wake up. And that was my rock bottom. And with no money in my bank account, no food in my fridge, nothing to my name at this point, I ended up here with my mom, and a year and a half later, here I am and doing so much better. But my rock bottom was terrifying. And I pray that no one I ever know has to hit that low before they get help. And that's kind of why I'm here, wanting to be transparent about my story so people can know that that is possible to get that bad, but you don't have to wait for it to get that bad to get some help.
Your story is incredible, by the way, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable, because there are people, and it's so interesting. You brought up a lot of things like tears. Like I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, and I know people right now going through this, and it's like, I wish I could show you what this is right now. Like, I wish I could show you this thing that comes off of you. Like, it really is like having the devil sitting on you sometimes. Like, there's nights where you're like, I feel like I'm having a conversation with the devil right in my head.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that we think and we say, it's crazy. Like, when you're sober, you're like, that is the craziest thing I've ever thought of, but I thought about it. Like, because that's our minds on alcohol and drugs and what it does and where you go. And so the sex work has been brought up a few times, and I'm going to bring it up because it's come up in conversations with people I know. Okay, so you're not the only one that I've heard, photos. It's very easy. It's very easy now. Every guy, like, and I'll just be transparent. Like, guys now know I'm single. And so they're like, hey, you want to send pictures? And I'm not in a position to do that. But, it's interesting because that's kind of the thing. And I was talking to my brother about it. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he's like, I know people with straight up files in their phone, like ready to go. Like, oh, here they are. And I know people who are doing pictures privately. Some are OnlyFans, some people do it and they make money. And now, am I condoning it? It's not my deal. It's not my body. It's not my deal. But what comes with that, a lot of times when people are doing it, they're doing it from shame. They're not doing it because they feel good about it. They're doing it because they're desperate. Okay. So when a woman or a man is doing those things out of shame, desperation, you're doing it, it's causing more trauma to the trauma. Okay. These people, you're hurting. In that video, been there. I didn't do a nude video, but I definitely did a video. And that was my rock bottom. And if I wouldn't have, I had to check myself. Like, I'm like, what did I just almost ruined my life. Social media is a blessing and a curse. And it takes 5 seconds, and you could totally screw yourself. And Drinking, you just don't care. Drugs, whatever. You're like, F it, I'll do it. And you get all this weird confidence, and all of a sudden you're doing it. So your story is incredible. But I also know people, similar stories. Like, it's very easy. And I know there are people listening, like the newest thing, like there's a lot of sex work happening. Like stripping used to be like the thing. Now it's photos, now it's videos. Now you can, there are people making a lot of money, doing this. And so I can't say what they're doing is it's their deal, but adding all the trauma and pain from childhood, adding all the things, it's a very scary world right now. And it just fuels the addiction, because as you add more shame, you add more drinks. F it. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter if I'm naked. Doesn't matter if he saw me this way. Like, it's very easy. And so, social media, all the things going on, your story's incredible. I'm so grateful you shared it. You got sober. You're doing amazing. So, let's talk about Brianna 2.0. What's coming for you? What has happened since sobriety for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, since I've got sober, when I ended up here at my mom's house, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I had nothing to do. I had no job. It was middle of COVID. I can't sell pictures anymore. I'm here at my mom's house. I'm not going to do that. It's not an option while I'm sober. And so I started looking for work. I really wanted to get a job doing something with like plants, because I just became a new hobby for me. So I started to apply at the nurseries. I was even like, man, I'll work at Home Depot. Just let me work around plants. Let me work around anything. And for the life of me, I could not get a job. And I have a pretty decent resume, and no one would hire me. And I was like, man, I want to work. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I had reconnected with a friend randomly who I had worked with in a bar years and years ago. And she was working at the Harley Davidson. And she's like, hey, there may be a position for you. Like, she goes, I never refer anyone, but she goes, I know how hard of a worker you are, and I will put your name in. And I got hired instantly. And I remember thinking, I don't know how am I going to work in Harley? Like, it's such a party scene, and we'll just see. I'm just going to jump in. It was on the retail side. I really didn't want to do retail, but let me go in and see what it was. And the pay and the hours were way better than I had thought they were. And there was actually a handful of sober people there. And I was like, all right, like, I can do this. And another girl had gotten the job at the same time as me. And she ended up being such a blessing for my life there, because she was someone who really helped me still figure out how to socialize without drinking. She was a friend that, like, we would go out, she would invite me out to things, and she'd be like, yeah, I just won't drink with you. And I would be like, how are you going to not drink? Like, it would blow my mind that she could just go out and have fun without drinking. But she really helped me through that time and showed me, like, oh yeah, like, I can still be around people and do things and even be around alcohol without having to consume it. So I've been there for about a year now. It's been the best job I've ever had. However, now I really just want to start to get past my own limits and fears, because it's terrifying, to even be on here and sharing my secrets that I've held so closely with me for so long. But like you said, I know that there's other women, there's other kids who are getting into drugs and drinking that want help. And so my next goal is to start a podcast, and I'm going to be writing a book, sharing a little bit more about my story, in hopes to reach especially the younger generation, but just anyone that wants to know that there is hope on the other side of that. If you are at the end of your line thinking there's no other option but to end your life, that there is another day past that, that there is help out there. There are so many people who are going through this who I think are scared, afraid, even embarrassed to talk about it. And I think the more that I let my guard down and the more I can get past my own, stuff, I can help people in that. So I did just like relaunch an Instagram page, and I just got all my equipment in to start my little studio here and start sharing my story a little bit more. So that's my next goal, and I'm really excited about it. This has been my first step on this show with you. So I'm really thankful that you invited me here today.
I'm excited. I think this has been an incredible, a show of journeys, discovery, obviously recovery, and just to be able to help other people, like share the pain and I think and share the shame. Like shame is one of the biggest things. And when I started to really identify what I was ashamed of, like when I actually felt the shame, I'm like, what is your shame? Why are you carrying this? Things started to go away. And I think a lot of people carry shame. I was carrying shame from my parents. I'm like, this isn't even my shame and I'm carrying it. Why do I feel like this? But it's a big deal. And the fact that you came on here and you just got so vulnerable, you opened up and you said it all, that's huge. That's huge. This is another stage of healing. So Brianna, thank you so much. We are going to share your links. You will be featured on all the things. We'll have some incredible clips for you, and everybody who's listening, watching can reach you. What is your Insta handle?
It's at mz .Bri_White. You can find me there, and I'll be posting all the time, really, like you said, just vulnerable stories and hopefully relatable things for people to get some help from.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible, beautiful woman, model, all the things. You're all the things. You're everything to me. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for coming on. And this has been another amazing episode of Grit and Grace. I am Shiloh Bijou, and thank you for listening to this incredible story. We'll catch you on the next one.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the market.